Husband hid a secret in the barn for decades, and his wife only found out after he was gone. Elizabeth Miller stood before the barn door for the first time in 27 years of marriage. Richard had always said that place was his refuge, where he kept tools and hay for the few animals they still raised on their small property in Denver. She had always respected that space, even when curiosity tugged at her. It was 3 days after the funeral when she finally decided to go inside. The house was too quiet, and organizing her husband's things seemed the only way to keep her mind occupied. As she pushed the heavy wooden door open, a musty smell of damp earth filled her nostrils. "My God, how abandoned this place is," she murmured to herself, eyeing the dusty hay bales and rusted tools. Elizabeth began moving the oldest bales, the ones Richard never touched. They were heavy, and she had to strain to drag each one. That's when her hands brushed against something different in the darkest corner of the barn. A small but sturdy wooden box was hidden behind the bales. Elizabeth's heart raced. Why would Richard hide a box there? She picked it up carefully, noticing it was surprisingly heavy. The latch was rusted but gave way with a little force. When Elizabeth opened it, she found stacks of letters yellowed with time, all written in the handwriting she knew so well. "Dear Jennifer," she read aloud from the first letter, dated 1995, 2 years before their marriage. "I think of you every day. I can't forget our time together." Elizabeth's hands trembled. Who was Jennifer? Why was Richard keeping love letters from another woman? She kept reading, each word like a stab to her heart. "I know I made the wrong choice when I decided to marry someone else, but I have to be responsible. Elizabeth is a good woman, and I can't hurt her. Still, my heart belongs to you." Elizabeth let the letter fall to the ground. Her legs grew weak and she leaned against the barn wall. 27 years. 27 years of marriage, and he had been thinking of another woman. With shaking hands, she picked up another letter. This one was from 1998, a year after their eldest son, Michael, was born. "Jennifer, our child was born. He's a beautiful boy, with your blue eyes. He has your smile, you know. Sometimes I look at him and see you. Elizabeth suspects nothing, and maybe it's better that way. I don't have the courage to tell her the truth." "No, no, no." Elizabeth shook her head, feeling the world spin. "This can't be true." She opened the box fully and found photographs. The first showed a baby with striking blue eyes. On the back, in neat handwriting, "Michael, 6 months." But it wasn't a photo she had taken. Digging further, she found more pictures. A child playing in the park, another on his first day of school, all featuring the same blue-eyed boy, all with dates matching Michael's childhood. "Mom?" Elizabeth turned, startled. Michael stood at the barn entrance, now a 26-year-old man with the same blue eyes from the photos. "Son, you scared me," she said, trying to hide the letters behind her. "Sorry, Mom, I saw the barn door open and got worried. What are you doing in here?" Elizabeth looked at her son, really looked. The blue eyes, the shape of his face, his smile. Had everything she believed about her family been a lie? "Michael, I need to ask you something very important," she said, her voice trembling. "Do you know if your father had any secrets?" Michael averted his gaze, a gesture Elizabeth knew well. He always did that when hiding something. "What kind of secret, Mom?" "Anything. Anything he told you and asked you not to tell me." Silence stretched between them. Michael looked at the letters scattered on the floor and then at the box in his mother's hand. "Mom, maybe it's best if you don't mess with that," he said quietly. "Did you know?" Elizabeth felt her blood boil. "You knew and never told me." "It's not exactly like that." "Then what is it, Michael? How could my own son hide things about his father from me?" Michael took a deep breath and walked into the barn, closing the door behind him. "Dad told me when I turned 18. He said I had the right to know the truth." Elizabeth felt her legs go weak again. "What truth?" "That I have a biological mother. That you're not my birth mother." The words fell like bombs in the silence of the barn. Elizabeth leaned against the wall, feeling the world crumble. "But that's impossible. I remember the birth, the pregnancy." "No, Mom, you officially adopted me, but I was born to another woman. Dad said she couldn't raise me, so he brought me home. And you never thought I should know? Dad made me promise never to tell. He said you suffered so much trying to have children that this was the only way to give Grandma Ruth a grandchild. Elizabeth remembered her mother-in-law, always so proud of her grandson. Ruth had passed 3 years ago, apparently taking more secrets with her. So your grandmother knew too? Everyone knew, Mom. Aunt Deborah, Grandma Ruth, even Sarah. Sarah was Elizabeth's youngest daughter, now 22. Learning that even she knew the truth felt like a punch to the gut. You all conspired against me? Elizabeth's voice came out louder than she intended. It wasn't a conspiracy, Mom. It was protection. Dad said you'd been through so much pain trying to get pregnant that when I came along, you were so happy he couldn't bring himself to tell you the truth. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, continuing, Elizabeth looked at the letters scattered on the floor. There was so much more to uncover. Who is Jennifer? She asked, picking up one of the letters. Michael sighed. Jennifer was Dad's girlfriend before you got married. She got pregnant, but her family wouldn't accept it. They told her either to get rid of the baby or be kicked out. And she chose to give me her child? Not exactly. Dad said it was complicated. Jennifer wanted to keep me but couldn't. Her family was very religious and conservative. When they found out about the pregnancy, they kicked her out anyway. Elizabeth felt a pang of compassion amid all the pain. What happened to her? Dad kept helping her financially. Jennifer moved to a nearby town, found a job. But she could never forget she had a son she couldn't raise. These letters, are they from him to her? Michael nodded. Dad wrote them but never sent them. Said it was his way of venting, of asking for forgiveness. Elizabeth picked up another letter, this one more recent, dated just 2 months ago. Jennifer, Michael graduated as an engineer. He's a good, honest man. Elizabeth raised him with so much love that sometimes I forget he's not her blood. But I know you'd want to know. I know you think of him every day, just as I think of you. Does she know I exist? Elizabeth asked. She does. Dad said she always asked about you, about how you treated me. Elizabeth felt a mix of anger and sadness. And he never thought to ask if I'd want to know this story. Mom, Dad was terrified of losing the family. He truly loved you, you know. But he carried this guilt for years. Guilt for what? For abandoning Jennifer, for letting her suffer alone, for building a family on a lie. Elizabeth looked at her son, really looked at him. Even though she knew he wasn't her biological son, she couldn't see him any differently. He was her boy, the one she raised, cared for when he was sick, took to school every day. Michael, no matter what, you know I love you like my own son, right? Michael stepped closer and hugged her. I know, Mom. That's why it was so hard to keep this secret. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. And Sarah. What exactly does she know? Sarah found out by accident about 3 years ago. She overheard a conversation between Dad and Grandma Ruth. She was shocked, but Dad asked her not to say anything either. Elizabeth felt betrayed by her whole family. How was it possible that everyone knew something so important about her life, and she was the only one left in the dark? Where is this woman now? Where's Jennifer? Michael hesitated. She lives in Boulder, never married, never had other kids. Dad said she never managed to move on. Does she know your dad? That Richard passed? I don't know. Dad stopped writing the letters a few months ago. He said he was finally going to tell you the truth, that he couldn't carry the weight anymore. Elizabeth felt her chest tighten. Richard had died suddenly of a heart attack, with no time for conversations or revelations. Maybe he really had been preparing to tell her everything. Is there anything else I need to know? Michael looked at the box in his mother's hands. There's more in there, documents, more photos. I think it's better if you look alone. You won't stay with me? Mom, I need to process this too. I never thought this day would come. I need to talk to Sarah, explain to her that you know everything now. Elizabeth nodded. Go, son. But promise me one thing. No more secrets in this family, no matter how hard the truth is. I promise, Mom. Michael left the barn, leaving Elizabeth alone with the box and her discoveries. She sat on a bale of hay and kept sifting through the contents. She found a birth certificate. The mother's name was indeed Jennifer Wilson, and the father was left blank. There was also a paper signed by Jennifer, giving custody of the child to Richard Miller, dated 3 days after the birth. 3 days, Elizabeth murmured. She had 3 days with her own son. As she kept searching, she found more photographs. Some showed a young, beautiful woman with brown hair and sad eyes. She held a baby in her arms, and the expression on her face was pure pain. On the back of one photo it read, "So you never forget the love of your first mother." Elizabeth felt tears streaming down her face. It wasn't anger she felt, but deep sadness. Sadness for Jennifer, for losing her son. Sadness for Richard, for carrying this burden alone. And sadness for herself, for living a life built on a lie. She then found a folder with financial documents, bank statements from an account she didn't recognize, monthly deposits, always the same amount, always on the same date. He was sending her money, Elizabeth realized, looking at the dates. The deposit started right after Michael's birth and continued until the previous month. Elizabeth did the math. Over 26 years, Richard had sent a considerable sum to Jennifer. Money he took from where? How had she never noticed? Mentally reviewing their family finances, Elizabeth remembered the extra jobs Richard always took. He fixed fences for neighbors, helped with harvests on other properties, always saying it was to build up savings. What savings? She muttered bitterly. It was to support Michael's mother. She kept shuffling through the papers and found something that made her stop. A deed. Richard had bought a small house in Boulder under Jennifer Wilson's name. He bought her a house. Elizabeth felt the anger rising again. The deed was dated 10 years ago. Richard had used the money from selling part of the property. Something he'd said at the time was to invest in the family's future. Elizabeth remembered the conversation. Richard had said it was better to sell that portion of the land because they weren't managing to take proper care of it. She had agreed, confident he knew what he was doing. Confident, she repeated bitterly. I always trusted him. At the bottom of the box, Elizabeth found one more surprise, a sealed envelope with her name on it. With trembling hands, she opened it. My dear Elizabeth. The letter began, written in the weary handwriting Richard had developed in recent years. If you're reading this, then you've finally found what I've hidden for so long. I know you'll be angry, and you have every right to be. But I need you to understand that everything I did was out of love. Elizabeth wiped away her tears and kept reading. When we met, I was already in this situation with Jennifer. She was pregnant and I didn't know what to do. My family said I had to take responsibility, but hers wouldn't accept it. When you came into my life, I thought God was giving me a second chance. You wanted children so badly, Elizabeth. I remember how you cried every month when you realized you hadn't gotten pregnant. When Michael was born and I saw your joy in caring for him, I couldn't bring myself to tell you the truth. I know it was selfish. I know you deserved to know. But I was so afraid of losing you, of losing the family we'd built. Elizabeth stopped reading for a moment. She truly remembered how hard it had been trying to conceive. 2 years of attempts, doctors' visits, dashed hopes. When Richard came home with Michael, saying an acquaintance couldn't raise the child, she hadn't asked questions. She'd been so happy to finally hold a child in her arms, she continued reading. Jennifer never asked me for anything. She only wanted to know if Michael was okay, if he was happy. I sent her photos, told her about his grades in school, his friends. It comforted her a little, but I know she suffered greatly. I never stopped loving her completely, Elizabeth, but I learned to love you too in a different way. You're an incredible woman, a perfect mother. Michael couldn't have been luckier. In recent months, I've thought a lot about this. I'm getting old and I know one day I'll have to answer for it. I decided I would tell the truth, but I wanted to do it the right way, at the right time. If something happens to me before then, know that you were the best wife and mother I could have ever wished for. And please don't hold a grudge against Jennifer. She's a good woman who's endured so much pain. The letter ended with a postscript. "There's one more thing I need to tell you, but I don't have the courage to write it. When you're ready, look for Jennifer. She'll explain it better than I ever could." Elizabeth folded the letter, her heart heavy. Richard had died before he could tell the truth, and now she was left alone to face all these revelations. But what else hadn't he had the courage to say? What could Jennifer explain that he couldn't bring himself to write? She glanced at the clock. It was almost 5 in the afternoon. Sarah would be coming home from work soon. Elizabeth decided she needed to talk to her daughter before making any decisions. She put everything back in the box and carried it inside. When Sarah arrived, she found her mother sitting in the kitchen, the wooden box on the table. "Mom, what's this?" "Sit down, sweetheart. We need to talk." Sarah looked at the box, then at her mother's flushed face. "You found out, didn't you? You knew too, everyone knew except me." Sarah sat and took her mother's hand. "Mom, I wanted to tell you, but Dad made me promise." "I know, honey. Michael explained it to me. Now tell me, what else do you know that I don't?" Sarah hesitated. "About what specifically?" "About Jennifer. About Michael's family. About anything your father hid from me. Mom, I know Jennifer never married. I know she works as a teacher in Boulder. And I know that—" Sarah stopped, as if struggling to continue. "Go on, Sarah. We can't have any more secrets." "I know she has a daughter." Elizabeth felt her blood run cold. "What do you mean she has a daughter?" "Jennifer adopted a girl about 15 years ago, a child who was in a vulnerable situation. Dad said she did it because she missed having a family." "And why would that matter?" Sarah looked at the box. "Because this girl, she calls Jennifer Mom, but she knows she's not her biological daughter. And a few years ago, she started asking questions about the older brother she never met." Elizabeth understood immediately. "She knows about Michael." "She does. And she really wanted to meet him, to get to know his family. But Dad always said it wasn't possible, that it would cause too many problems." "How old is this girl?" "She must be about 17 now. Dad said she's very smart, that she wants to study medicine." Elizabeth stood up and began pacing the kitchen. "So Michael has an adoptive sister he doesn't even know?" "Yes, and she has a mother who dreams of meeting her biological son." "This is insane, Sarah. Our whole family built on lies." Sarah stood up and hugged her mother. "Mom, I know this is hard to process, but you need to know that Dad loved our family. He just didn't know how to deal with the past. And now? What do I do with all this?" "I think you should meet Jennifer. Talk to her, hear her side of the story." Elizabeth sat back down. "I don't know if I have the courage." "Mom, you're the bravest woman I know. You raised Michael as if he were your own, raised me to be independent, took care of Dad in his final years when he was sick. I'm sure you can handle this too." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Elizabeth looked at her daughter, feeling a wave of affection. Sarah was right. She had faced many hardships in life and always found the strength to move forward. "Do you have her address?" "I do. Dad gave it to me a few years ago. He said if anything happened to him, I should help you find Jennifer if you wanted to." So he really was planning to tell everything. He was. In the last few months, he talked about it a lot, said he was tired of carrying this weight. Elizabeth picked up the box and opened it again. "Is there anything else here I haven't seen?" Sarah looked through the contents. "I think there's a brown envelope at the bottom. I've never seen what's inside." Elizabeth searched and found the envelope. Inside were more photographs, but these were different. They showed a smiling teenager with curly hair and bright eyes. "That must be Jennifer's adoptive daughter," said Sarah, looking at the photos. "Her name is Emily." "Emily," Elizabeth repeated. "What a beautiful name." The photos showed Emily at different ages, at school, at a graduation, smiling next to a woman who must have been Jennifer. In every photo, she looked happy and well cared for. "Jennifer seems like a good mother," Elizabeth observed. "Dad always said she was a very special woman. that she deserved a family, but circumstances never allowed it. Elizabeth kept looking at the photos. In one, Emily was wearing a white lab coat, apparently at some school event. She really wants to be a doctor. Yes. And she's very smart. Dad said she has a scholarship at a private school. A scholarship your father helped pay for? Sarah nodded. He always helped Jennifer with Emily's expenses too. Said it was his way of making up for stealing a child from her. Elizabeth felt a mix of admiration and sadness. Richard had carried this responsibility for decades, supporting a parallel family without her knowing. Sarah, I need to meet this woman. I need to look her in the eyes and understand this whole story. Are you sure, Mom? I am, but I want you and Michael to come with me. I don't want to face this alone. Of course, Mom, we'll go together. Elizabeth took the paper with the address Sarah had brought. Let's go tomorrow. I don't want to spend all night thinking about this. Maybe we should call first, let her know we're coming. Do you have her phone number? Dad gave it to me too. Elizabeth looked at her daughter, surprised by how much Sarah knew about the whole situation. How long have you known about all this? 3 years, since I found out by accident. It was really hard to keep it a secret, Mom. I can imagine. I'm sorry if I was harsh with you today. I know it wasn't easy for you either. You don't have to apologize, Mom. You have every right to be angry. Elizabeth stood up and went to the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Outside, she could see the barn where she had made all those discoveries. You know what, Sarah? I'm angry, but I'm also curious. I want to meet the woman who gave birth to Michael. I want to know what she's like, how she lives. What if she doesn't want to meet you? Then I'll respect that, but something tells me she will. After 26 years, I think she has a lot of questions too. Sarah moved closer to her mother. Mom, no matter what happens, you know we love you so much, right? Michael and I can't imagine anyone else as our mother. Elizabeth hugged her daughter, feeling tears roll down her face. I know, sweetheart, and you're the best children I could have ever wished for. That night, Elizabeth barely slept. Her mind was full of questions and scenarios. What would Jennifer be like? What would she say when she saw her? How would she react to hearing Richard had passed away? The next morning, Sarah called Jennifer. The conversation was brief, but she agreed to the visit. She said she's been waiting for this moment for years, Sarah said, hanging up the phone. Michael arrived shortly after, clearly nervous. Mom, are you sure you want to do this? I am, son. I need to meet your birth mother. She's not my mother, Mom. You're my mother. Jennifer is, I don't know, the woman who gave birth to me. Elizabeth smiled and kissed her son's forehead. Thank you for saying that, Michael. But she's important too. She gave you life. The three of them left the house late in the morning. The drive to Boulder took about an hour, enough time for Elizabeth to mentally go over everything she wanted to ask. Jennifer's house was in a simple but well-kept neighborhood. It was small, with a front garden full of colorful flowers. Elizabeth noticed a small sign on the door, Jennifer Wilson, private tutor. She gives private lessons, Sarah observed. Probably to supplement her income, Michael said. Elizabeth took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. Seconds later, the door opened, and she found herself face to face with the woman who had given birth to her son. Jennifer was beautiful, even at 47. Her graying brown hair was tied in a bun, her blue eyes, the same as Michael's, and a kind but tired expression. Elizabeth? Jennifer asked softly. It's me. And these are my children, Michael and Sarah. Jennifer looked at Michael with tears in her eyes. My God, you've grown so handsome. You're so tall. Michael didn't know how to react. Hi, Jennifer. Please come in. I made coffee. The house was small but cozy. There were photos of Emily scattered around the living room, and Elizabeth noticed a few pictures of Michael too, likely the ones Richard had sent over the years. Please, have a seat, said Jennifer, clearly nervous. I don't quite know what to say. You can start by telling me your side of the story, said Elizabeth, sitting on the couch. Jennifer sighed and settled into the armchair across from her. I was 19 when I got pregnant. I was in my last year of teacher training. dreaming of becoming a teacher. Richard had been my boyfriend for 2 years. Did you love each other? Very much. I thought we'd get married, have a family. But when I told him about the pregnancy, he panicked, said he wasn't ready to be a father. Michael shifted on the couch, uncomfortable. So he didn't want to stand by me? It wasn't like that, Michael. He wanted to, but he was scared. We were so young, he didn't have a steady job, and my family karma was complicated. How so? Asked Elizabeth. My parents were very strict. When they found out about the pregnancy, they kicked me out, said I had brought shame to the family. And where did you go? A boarding house. I worked at a store during the day and studied at night. Richard helped when he could, but it was hard for all of us. Elizabeth felt a pang of sympathy. It must have been so difficult, being pregnant and alone. It was, but I held on to hope that once Michael was born, everything would work out, that Richard would take responsibility and we'd become a family. But that's not what happened. Jennifer shook her head. When Michael was born, Richard came to the hospital. He held the baby, cried, said he was the most beautiful child in the world. I thought everything was settled. But then, 2 days later, he came back with a proposal, said he'd met a woman who couldn't have children, who desperately wanted to be a mother, that it would be better for Michael to be raised by a stable family. Elizabeth's heart tightened. And you agreed? Not right away. I said I wanted to meet this woman, to know what she was like. Richard talked so much about you, Elizabeth, said you were a teacher, that you had a home, that you'd give Michael a good life. But you didn't know me personally. No. Richard said it would be too complicated, that it was better to make the transition simple without us meeting. Michael stood and walked to the window. So you decided my life without asking me. Michael, you were 3 days old, said Jennifer gently. We made the decision we thought was best for you. And for you, was it better for you to give me away? Jennifer began to cry. No, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I couldn't raise a child. I had no home, no steady job, no family to help me. Elizabeth stood and went to Jennifer. You did what you thought was right at the time. You don't have to justify yourself. Thank you for saying that, Elizabeth. I always feared you'd hate me. I don't hate you, Jennifer. I just want to understand everything that happened. Jennifer wiped her eyes and continued. After I gave Michael up, I moved here. Got a job as a teacher, tried to rebuild my life. But you never married. No. I tried a few relationships, but I could never fully let go. I always wondered if I'd done the right thing. And Richard, did he stay in touch? He sent photos, letters about how Michael was doing. It comforted me, but it also made me sad. I watched my son grow up through pictures. Sarah, who had been quiet until then, spoke up. Jennifer, can I ask you about Emily? Jennifer's eyes brightened. Oh, Emily. She's my light. I adopted her when she was 2. She was in a very difficult situation, and I felt God was giving me a second chance to be a mother. Does she know about Michael? She does. I've always been honest with her. When she started asking about family, I told her she had an older brother living with another family. And did she want to meet him? Very much. She always dreamed of having a brother. But I never had the courage to reach out to you. I was afraid of disrupting Michael's life. At that moment, the front door opened and a young voice called out, Mom, I'm home. Emily is here, Jennifer said nervously. She left school early today. A beautiful teenager with curly hair and bright eyes appeared in the living room. When she saw the visitors, she stopped in surprise. Mom, you didn't tell me we had company. Jennifer stood up. Emily, these are very special people. Elizabeth, Michael, and Sarah. Emily looked at Michael curiously. Michael, the Michael you always talk about. Yes, sweetheart. This is your brother. The room fell completely silent. Emily stood frozen, staring at Michael as if she were seeing a ghost. My brother, she repeated softly. Michael stepped closer to her. Hi, Emily. I've always wanted to meet you, too. Emily burst into tears and ran to hug him. "I've dreamed of this moment. I always wanted a brother." Elizabeth watched the scene, overwhelmed by indescribable emotion. Seeing Michael embrace the sister he'd never known was both beautiful and painful. "You're taller than I imagined," Emily said, laughing through her tears, "and you're prettier than in the photos." "You've seen my pictures?" Michael glanced at Elizabeth, who nodded. "Yes, I have. Richard kept photos of you." "Richard? Where is he? Why didn't he come?" Silence filled the room again. Elizabeth was the one who answered. "Sweetheart, Richard. He passed away a week ago." Jennifer pressed a hand to her chest. "He's gone." "How?" "A heart attack. It was very quick. He didn't suffer." Jennifer sank heavily into the armchair. "I always thought we'd talk again one day, that he'd come here, that we could talk about everything." "He wanted to, Jennifer. He left a letter saying he was going to tell me the truth, that he couldn't keep hiding it anymore." "What letter?" Elizabeth told her about the discovery in the barn, the hidden box, all the revelations of the past few days. "So you didn't know anything?" Jennifer asked, surprised. "Nothing. I was the last to find out." "My God, Elizabeth, it must have been terrible to learn everything at once." "It was, but now I'm here trying to make sense of it all." Emily, who had sat down beside Michael, took his hand. "Brother, tell me what it was like growing up with our mom, Elizabeth." Michael looked at Elizabeth and smiled. "It was wonderful. She's the best mom in the world." "Even knowing you weren't her biological son?" "That never mattered. She always treated me like her own. I never felt like I was missing anything." Emily turned to Elizabeth. "Thank you for taking care of my brother." Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. "No need to thank me, sweetheart. Raising Michael was a privilege." "Can I call you Aunt Elizabeth?" "Of course you can." Jennifer stood up. "I'll make more coffee. I think we have a lot to talk about." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. As Jennifer went to the kitchen, Emily bombarded Michael with questions. She wanted to know about his childhood, his school, his friends. Michael answered patiently, clearly moved by his sister's curiosity. "Michael, did you always know you were adopted?" Emily asked. "I found out when I was 18. Dad told me, but asked me not to tell my mom." "And you never wanted to meet me?" "I did, but Dad said it was complicated, that it could cause problems for everyone." "Problems? What problems?" Sarah answered. "Emily, our family had to keep this secret for a long time. Dad was afraid that if everyone knew, the family would fall apart. But why? Wouldn't having more people in the family be a good thing?" "It should have been," Elizabeth said, sitting back down. "But sometimes people make things complicated when they could be simple." Jennifer came back with the coffee and served everyone. "Elizabeth, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you mad at me for giving Michael to you to raise?" Elizabeth thought for a moment. "Jennifer, I've spent the last few days feeling anger, confusion, sadness. But looking at you now, seeing how much you've suffered, I can't stay angry. Even knowing I kept loving Richard all these years? Even then, you had to give up your son so he could have a better life. That must have been terrible." "It was. But seeing Michael now, seeing the good man he's become, makes me feel it might have been worth it." Michael stood up and went to Jennifer. "Can I give you a hug?" Jennifer started crying again. "Of course, my son." Their embrace was long and emotional. Elizabeth watched, feeling a mix of joy and melancholy. It was beautiful to see Michael discovering his roots, but it was also painful to realize how much love had been lost because of fear and silence. "Jennifer," Elizabeth said after the hug, "I need to tell you something. Richard left a letter saying there was something more he didn't have the courage to write, that you could explain it better than he could." Jennifer turned pale. "He said that?" "Yes. What was he talking about?" Jennifer looked at Emily, then at Michael, then at Elizabeth. "I think it's better if we talk alone." "No," Emily said firmly. "We've had enough secrets in this family. We want to know everything." "Emily's right," Michael agreed. We don't want anything hidden anymore. Jennifer took a deep breath. All right, but it might shock you. After everything we've learned, I think we're ready for anything, Sarah said. Richard wanted to marry me. What do you mean? Elizabeth asked, confused. He ended things with you to be with me. That was 5 years ago. The room fell completely silent. Elizabeth felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. He broke up with me, she repeated, disbelieving. Yes, he said he couldn't live a lie anymore, that he wanted to make our relationship public. But we never broke up. He never said anything about it. Jennifer looked confused. What do you mean? He told me he'd talked to you, that you'd both decided to separate amicably. That never happened, Jennifer. Richard and I were married until the day he passed, but that's impossible. He came here every weekend for the last 5 years, said you were just friends now, that you stayed in the same house for the kids' sake. Elizabeth stood up, pacing the room. Every weekend? He told me he was going fishing with his friends. Fishing? He came here, stayed with us, even helped Emily with her homework. Emily confirmed. It's true, Aunt Elizabeth. Daddy Richard was always here on weekends. Daddy Richard? Michael repeated, shocked. Yes, he asked me to call him that. Said he was like a father to me. Elizabeth leaned against the wall, trying to process everything. So he was living a double life. Married to me during the week, dating you on weekends. It wasn't like that, Elizabeth, Jennifer said desperately. He told me you were separated. I'd never accept being the other woman. But you were the other woman, Jennifer. He deceived me, deceived you, deceived everyone. Michael stood up, visibly upset. This can't be true. Dad wouldn't do that. Michael, I have pictures, Emily said, grabbing her phone. Pictures of him here with us over the years. She showed the photos to Michael and Sarah. Richard smiling at the dinner table, helping Emily with her studies, hugging Jennifer on the couch. He looked so happy, Sarah remarked, looking at the pictures. He was happy here, Jennifer said, or at least he seemed to be. He talked about how good it felt to be a real family. Elizabeth felt anger rising. A real family? Then what were we? Elizabeth, please don't be mad at me. I really thought you two were separated. I'm not mad at you, Jennifer. I'm mad at Richard. He lied to all of us. But why? Asked Emily. Why would he do that? Because he was a coward, said Elizabeth bitterly. He wanted both families, but didn't have the courage to commit to either choice. Michael sat down, running his hands through his hair. So my father was a liar. Don't say that, Michael, said Jennifer. He loved you so much. He talked about you all the time. But he also loved Emily, and you, and my mom. How can someone love so many people at once? I think he was confused, said Sarah. He created a situation that could never work. Elizabeth sat back down. Jennifer, you really had no idea? Sometimes I thought it was strange he couldn't stay during the week, but he always said it was because of work, that he had to take care of the property. And you believed him? I wanted to. After so many years alone, having Richard in my life, even if only on weekends, was better than nothing. But did you make plans for the future? We did. He said once Emily graduated, we could get married officially, that he'd make things right. Make what right? He was already married to me. He said you'd only had a civil ceremony, that it didn't count, that when he married me it would be in church for real. Elizabeth laughed bitterly. He really thought of everything, didn't he? Elizabeth, I'm so sorry. If I'd known he was still married to you, I'd never have accepted this. I know, Jennifer. You were deceived too. Emily, who had been quiet, began to cry. So it was all a lie. He didn't really love me. No, sweetheart, said Elizabeth, moving closer. I'm sure he loved you, but he loved everyone at once, and that doesn't work. But how could he do it? Live two different lives? I don't know, Emily. I don't think even he knew what was real anymore. Michael stood again. Mom, I want to leave. I can't take hearing more about him. Michael, wait, said Jennifer. I know it's hard, but now that we've met, we can't just walk away. Why not? This whole family was built on lies. But we aren't lies, Michael. I'm your birth mother. Emily is your sister. Elizabeth raised you. That's real. Elizabeth stepped toward her son. Michael, I know you're confused. So am I. But Jennifer's right. No matter your father's mistakes, we're family now. How can we be family when we don't even know who we really are? We're who we choose to be, said Sarah, and I choose you, all of you. Emily stood and went to Michael. Brother, I get why you're angry, but I've waited my whole life for a family. I can't lose you now. Michael looked at his sister, and Elizabeth saw his expression soften. You really think of me as your brother? Of course. You're my big brother, the one I always wanted to meet. Even knowing our father was complicated. Even then, we're not our father, Michael. We can be different. Michael sighed and hugged Emily. You're right. Sorry if I was harsh. You weren't harsh, just confused. So am I. Elizabeth watched, feeling an odd sense of peace. Despite the lies and complications, something real was there. The love between siblings, the care for one another, the desire to be a family. Jennifer, she said, what do we do now? I don't know, Elizabeth. I never imagined we'd uncover all this. Well, first, I think we need to be honest with each other. No more secrets. I completely agree. Second, we need to decide how to handle this situation. We have two families that came together in the most unexpected way. I'd like to stay part of your lives, Jennifer said timidly, if you'll allow it. Of course I will. You're Michael's mother, and that will never change. And I'd like you to be part of our lives, too. Emily clapped her hands. Does that mean we're going to be a big family? I think so, sweetheart. Elizabeth smiled. A very complicated family, but a family all the same. Can I visit you too? See where Michael grew up? Of course. Actually, how about dinner at our place tomorrow, all of us together? Really? Emily asked excitedly. Really? I'll make lasagna, Michael's favorite. I love lasagna too. Then it's settled. Tomorrow at 7, everyone at our house. Michael smiled, and Elizabeth noticed it was the first genuine smile he'd had since finding everything out. Mom, thank you for being like this, for accepting this whole crazy situation. I'm not accepting your father's lies, Michael. I'm accepting you. I'm choosing my family. Our family, Sarah corrected. Now we're all one family. Our family, Elizabeth repeated, liking how it sounded. Jennifer stepped closer to Elizabeth. Can I hug you? Of course. Their embrace was hesitant at first, but soon turned warm. Two women who had been deceived by the same man but now found a way to move forward together. Thank you, Elizabeth, for everything. Thank you too, Jennifer, for bringing Michael into the world, for raising Emily, for being strong when I didn't even know I had to be. So what now? Now we'll be a real family, not one built on secrets, but one that chooses to stay together. Emily stepped forward and hugged both women. You're the best mums in the world. Mums? Elizabeth asked. Yes. Jennifer is my heart mom and you're my borrowed mum. Can I have two mums? Of course you can, sweetheart. You can have as many mums as you want. Michael and Sarah joined the hug, and for a moment, there in Jennifer's small living room, they were truly a family. Not a perfect one, not a traditional one, but a family that had chosen to stay together despite everything. When they left Jennifer's house, it was already evening. The walk home was quiet, each of them processing everything that had happened. Mom, Michael said as they neared home, thank you for going there today. No need to thank me, son. We needed to know the truth. So what do we do now? We move forward. We'll be a family, with all the problems and all the joy that brings. Even knowing Dad lied to us. Michael, your father was a complicated man. He did wrong things, but he did right things too. He gave me you, and that's the best thing that ever happened to me. He also gave Emily to Jennifer, Sarah pointed out. Exactly, and now Emily is part of our family too. Are we really going to make this work, Mom? This crazy family? Elizabeth smiled. We will, Michael, because family isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to stay together even when things get hard. And about love, Sarah added. And about forgiveness, Elizabeth finished. That night, Elizabeth went back to the barn for the second time. But now it wasn't to uncover secrets. It was to put the letters and photos back in the box. Some secrets needed to be revealed, but others could rest in peace. She looked at the empty space where the hay bales used to be. Richard, you made everything so complicated. But in the end, maybe it worked out. We have a family now. A strange one, but ours. The next day, Jennifer and Emily arrived right at 7. Emily brought flowers for Elizabeth, and Jennifer brought a homemade cake. "What beautiful flowers," Elizabeth said as she took them. "I picked them from our garden. Mom, Jennifer said every special visit deserves flowers. You are all very special to us." During dinner, the conversations were lighter. Emily talked about school, about her dreams of becoming a doctor. Michael spoke about work, about his plans for the future. "Michael, can I ask you something?" said Emily in the middle of dessert. "Of course. Will you still consider me your sister, even after knowing everything?" Michael smiled. "Emily, you are my sister. Nothing will change that. Even if I'm just adopted. Even then, besides, I'm adopted too, remember." "That's right, we both are." "You are both loved," corrected Elizabeth. "It doesn't matter how you came into our lives. What matters is that you're here." "Aunt Elizabeth, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, dear." "Were you able to forgive Daddy Richard?" Elizabeth thought for a moment. "I'm trying, Emily. I'm still angry with him, but I'm trying to forgive." "Why?" "Because holding on to anger won't bring him back, and because he, despite all his mistakes, gave us this family." "Do you think he really loved us?" "I think so. He just didn't know how to show that love the right way." Jennifer, who had been quiet, decided to speak. "Emily, can I tell you something about Daddy Richard?" "Of course, Mum. He talked about you a lot to me. He said you were the most important thing in his life after Michael." "Really?" "Really. He was so proud when you got good grades, when you helped your classmates at school. He loved you very much." "And did he talk about Michael too?" "Every day. He said Michael was the man he wished he could have been when he was young. Michael was moved." "He said that?" "He did. He was very proud of you, Michael. He said you were hardworking, honest, a good son." "So he didn't regret giving me to Mum Elizabeth?" "No. He said he'd made the right choice, that Elizabeth had been the perfect mother for you." Elizabeth felt tears in her eyes. "Thank you for telling me that, Jennifer." "It's the truth, Elizabeth. He always said you were a special woman, that he was lucky to have you as his wife." "Even with another family?" "Even then. He was conflicted, but he loved both of you. He just didn't know how to reconcile it." "Maybe there was no way to reconcile it," said Sarah. "Maybe he had to choose." "But if he had chosen, someone would have lost out," observed Emily. "That's true. And now we don't have to choose anymore. We can all be one family. One very big family," Michael laughed. "The bigger the better," said Elizabeth. "More people to love and be loved by." After dinner, they sat in the living room. Emily was curious about Michael's childhood, and Elizabeth showed photo albums. "Look how adorable you were, brother," said Emily, seeing a photo of Michael at 5 years old. "You were adorable too," said Michael, remembering the photos he'd seen of Emily. "You saw my childhood photos?" "I did. Daddy kept them in the barn." "He kept our photos in the same place?" "He did. I think to him, we were all part of the same family, even if we lived apart. That's beautiful." "It is. Even if it was messy, he loved us all." Elizabeth watched the interaction between the two and felt a peace she hadn't felt in days. Seeing Michael and Emily bonding as siblings, seeing Jennifer naturally becoming part of the family, it all made her feel that maybe Richard, without even realizing it, had done the right thing. "Jennifer," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, Elizabeth." "Do you regret giving Michael to me?" "No. Seeing the man he's become, seeing how much you love each other, I don't regret it. But I wish I could have been more a part of his life. I wish I could have been there in some way. And now you will be. From now on, you'll be part of everything." "Really? Can I come to his birthdays?" "Of course. In fact, Michael's birthday is next month. We'll throw a party." A family party, added Sarah. Exactly. Our first party as a complete family. Emily clapped her hands. Can I help organize it? Of course you can. In fact, you'll have to help me figure out what Michael likes since you're his sister. He likes lasagna just like me. Then we'll make lasagna for the birthday. And chocolate cake. And chocolate cake, Michael laughed. You're already planning my party without asking me. Exactly, said Elizabeth. That's how family works. Everyone gets into everyone else's business. So can I get into Emily's business too? You can, Emily replied. Now you're going to be my annoying older brother wanting to know who I'm dating. Are you dating someone? Michael asked immediately. No, but if I were, you'd want to know. I definitely would. There, you're already fighting like real siblings, Sarah laughed. And is that a good thing? Jennifer asked. It's great. It means they're comfortable with each other. So we really managed to become a family. We did, Jennifer. A different kind of family, but a family. A family that chose each other, said Elizabeth, which is the best kind of family there is. When Jennifer and Emily left, it was already late. They promised to come back the following weekend, and Elizabeth promised to visit their house too. Mom, Michael said as they were saying goodbye, thank you for today. Thank you for what, son? For accepting Emily as part of the family, for being kind to Jennifer, for being you. No need to thank me, Michael. That's what family is. We accept, we love, we move forward. Even when things get complicated. Especially when things get complicated. That night, Elizabeth went to bed feeling lighter than she had in days. Yes, she had discovered her husband had lied to her for years. Yes, she had learned her whole life was built on half-truths, but she had also discovered she had a bigger family than she'd imagined. She had learned that Michael had a birth mother who loved him, a sister who admired him. She had realized she could share the love she felt for Michael with others who loved him too. And most of all, she had discovered that family isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to stay together even when everything seems to be falling apart. 2 weeks later, Elizabeth was in the barn again, but this time she wasn't alone. Emily was with her, helping sort through Richard's things. Aunt Elizabeth, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Do you miss Daddy, Richard? Elizabeth stopped going through the boxes and looked at the girl. I do, Emily. Even with all the lies, I still miss him. I miss him too, even knowing he wasn't honest with us. Do you think he really loved us? I think so. He just didn't know how to show that love the right way. Mom Jennifer said he talked about you guys a lot to her, and I'm sure he talked about you guys to us too, just indirectly. What do you mean? He always said he wanted to see other places, meet other people. Now I understand he was talking about you. So deep down he wanted us to meet. I think so. He just didn't know how to make it happen. Emily picked up one of the letters Richard had written to Jennifer. Can I read it? Go ahead. We don't have secrets anymore. Emily read silently, and Elizabeth saw tears rolling down the girl's face. He really loved my mom, didn't he? He did. And he loved you too. And he loved us too. How can one person love so many people at once? I don't know, Emily. I think your daddy Richard's heart was just very big, but he should have been honest with us. He should have. But sometimes people do the wrong things for the right reasons. What right reasons? He wanted to protect everyone. He didn't want anyone to get hurt. But in the end, everyone suffered anyway. That's true. Sometimes when we try too hard to protect, we end up hurting instead. Emily folded the letter and placed it back in the box. Aunt Elizabeth, can I tell you a secret? Of course, dear. I always dreamed of having a big family. When I was little, I made up brothers and aunts and cousins. Now, I have all of that for real. And so do we, Emily. You gave us a bigger family too, even with all this mess. Especially because of the mess. Family isn't about being perfect. It's about sticking together even when things get hard. And we'll stay together. We will. Forever. Promise? I promise. Emily hugged Elizabeth, and in that moment, in the barn where it had all begun, Elizabeth felt she had finally found peace. 3 months later, on Michael's birthday, the whole family gathered at Elizabeth's house. Jennifer had become a constant presence, helping in the kitchen, taking part in family decisions. Emily came every weekend, and Elizabeth had grown used to a house full of laughter and conversation. "Mom," Michael said as he cut the cake, "thank you for turning this crazy situation into something beautiful." "I didn't do it alone, son. We all decided we wanted to be a family." "A very weird family," Sarah laughed. "The best family in the world," Emily added. "Even with all the problems," Jennifer said. "Especially with all the problems," Elizabeth replied, "because we got through it all together." That night, after everyone had left, Elizabeth returned to the barn one last time. She had turned the space into a kind of memorial, with photos of the whole family, the old and the new, covering the walls. "Richard," she said, looking at a photo of him with Michael, "you complicated everything. But in the end, maybe it all worked out. We have a family now, a strange family, but ours." She turned off the light and closed the barn door. Some secrets had been revealed, others had been forgiven. But the most important thing was that love had won in the end. Love that wasn't perfect, love that was complicated, love that was human, but real love, the kind that had brought together people who could have become enemies. 2 years later, Elizabeth sat on her porch, watching Michael and Emily play with Sarah's children. Yes, Sarah had married and given Elizabeth 2 grandchildren. Jennifer was in the kitchen preparing Sunday lunch, something that had become tradition. "Grandma Elizabeth," the youngest granddaughter asked, "why don't Uncle Michael and Aunt Emily live in the same house if they're siblings?" Elizabeth smiled. "Because, sweetheart, family isn't about living in the same house. It's about loving and caring for each other, even when you're far apart. And do you love each other?" "Very much. We all love each other very much." "Even with all the problems?" "Especially with all the problems." The little girl seemed satisfied with the answer and went back to playing. Elizabeth watched her family gathered together and felt deep gratitude. Yes, it had all started with lies and secrets, but it had ended with love and truth. And maybe that was the greatest lesson of the whole story, that family isn't about perfection, but about choosing to stay together, even when everything seems to be falling apart. That true love isn't the kind that never faces hardships, but the kind that survives them all. And that sometimes the most painful secrets can turn into the most unexpected blessings. Elizabeth looked at the barn, now freshly painted and filled with her grandchildren's toys. The place where it had all begun was now a symbol of new beginnings, of family, of love that conquers all lies. "Thank you, Richard," she whispered, "for all the complications, for all the lies, for all the problems, because in the end, you gave us a family." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this moving story about secrets, forgiveness, and family. Do you think Elizabeth made the right decision by accepting Jennifer and Emily as part of the family? How would you react if you discovered secrets like these about your own family? Share your honest thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like the video and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.